I'm Derek Stoley.
My name is Julien Dubois.
My name is Johannes Schinderlin.
Hey, I'm Johan.
So let's get started. This presentation today is how to get started with open source. And so Nick introduced me already, but I am Sasha Rosenbaum. I started my career as a developer. I worked in ops as well a little bit. I was an architect for Microsoft for a number of years, and right now I'm a product manager for GitHub. And you can find me on GitHub and on Twitter as DivineOps. So please feel free, if you have any questions, to submit them on Twitter. So I like to get started with definitions. So let's first talk about what open source really is. So open source software technically is defined as software that has a permissive license that allows users to share, use, study, change, and distribute that software free of charge for any purpose. Right? So technically, all you need for your software to be open source is to have that kind of permissive license. There's a number of these licenses around. One of the popular ones is MAT, another one is GPL. There's a bunch of different ones. If you go to that link, it will actually list licenses for you and show you, like, if I wanted to do this type of contribution, this type of community, which license fits best. So technically, if you just went to GitHub and you just created a new repository right now, as I'm showing, this is a pre-recorded little demo, but basically all you need to do is create a new repository, make it public, and then basically we allow you to choose which kind of license you want to attach to it. So of course you can choose no license, or you can choose one of the open source licenses. And then if you do that and you create your repository, that will make it open source, right? So technically right now, by creating this, I just contributed to open source. Now, of course, there's more to it than that, right? Because we want to make meaningful contributions, not just create a repository that is empty and has a permissive license. So let's talk also about why you should contribute to open source in the first place. Well, so I'm going to go to one of the popular quotes by Mike Anderson. He says, "Software is eating the world." He said it in 2011, and he was right. I mean, digital companies were replacing non-digital companies at a really fast rate. So like we can talk about Netflix replacing Blockbuster, or Skype bidding actual dial tone phones. Nobody has a telephone line in their home anymore, stuff like that, right? But it wasn't just any software actually that was eating the world. So if we talk about Microsoft specifically, we go a couple decades back, we actually see that Steve Ballmer said Linux is a cancer. Microsoft was pretty vehemently against open source. And now we can see Satya, like this was, I think, 2016, standing on stage in front of Microsoft Loves Linux. So what happened here? What happened is that Microsoft recognized what's really happening in the world, and Microsoft wasn't the only place, of course. But if we look at the software composition reports, we see that 99% of organizations actually use open source, and 90% of your software comes from open source. So basically, only like 10% of your code is your new business logic that's unique to you. Everything else is actually coming out of your open source libraries dependencies. And that's a good thing, because you don't have to re-implement data in time, or re-implement multiplication, or re-implement sorting a list, right? That's a great thing for you, right? But also, contributing to open source may provide you with some personal benefits. So one of them is that you can gain professional experience, right? So this is a chart of most popular languages among GitHub repositories by year. I'm not showing it to prove that JavaScript is the best language to learn. I'm showing it to show you that there's a lot of different languages in GitHub projects, a lot of different operating systems. You can write firmware, you can write software, you can write any kind of application that you want that is open source, and you can contribute to the community in a meaningful way by doing that. So kind of choose your tech stack and then go contribute to that project. then you get to build relationships. So for me personally, the most meaningful relationships actually didn't come from open source. They came from DevOps community. I've been involved in that since 2014. And it grew from a niche community into this huge global thing that involves multiple thousands of people, right? And this year we had to do it virtually, which wasn't as good, but I think we still brought value to the community. But basically, you also get to choose your path. In addition to building these relationships, you can kind of choose your own adventure. And so in your regular job, you might be assigned tasks and projects and told what to work on and told which role you belong in and stuff like that. In open source, you can choose, do I want to be a leader? Do I want to be an IC? Do I want to contribute to this project or that project? Right? Kind of work on the stuff that's most interesting to you. So this is lots of rainbows and unicorns, and this is good. There's also some drawbacks to contributing to open source, actually. So one of them is that there's usually no official onboarding. Usually when you join a company, you get onboarding, you get an onboarding buddy, your manager kind of walks you through what's going on. In open source, oftentimes you just show up and you try to figure out how to best contribute, and you might not get the onboarding. And we're going to talk about this a little bit more. There's also some unintentional gatekeeping. Sometimes there's also intentional gatekeeping, but basically that whole thing with you showing up and trying to contribute, you might not always get the most welcoming response. And let's face it, the less you look like the stereotypical engineer, the more sort of gatekeeping you're likely to face. And that's very unfortunate for our community, and we're trying to improve every day. But honestly, like if you are experiencing imposter syndrome about your first open source contribution, know that this not only you, it literally happens to everyone, and especially to underrepresented people. So my advice to you, if you're just getting started, is that you choose a welcoming community. You don't want to do it yourself to go and fight adversity. Basically, you just choose a project that is welcoming, choose a community that is welcoming. So one of the signs of a welcoming project is that they have a code of conduct. So basically, if you go to the repo and then /CodeOfConduct.md, you will find a code of conduct. And again, some projects don't have it. It kind of tells you that they didn't think through, how to best contribute to their community, how to best make sure that everyone is welcome. If the project, so this particular is from Metasploit, and it kind of describes what community standards and norms they have for contributors to their community. So it kind of tells you that these people are more welcoming than others. You can also look at issues and PRs. You can see how people are talking to one another and kind of derive from that what kind of community that really is. And also, it's an important lesson for open source and also in life. Don't be a jerk. Open source maintainers are doing a lot of free work, right? And they don't actually owe you accepting your PR, and they actually get hate mail sometimes with oh, why don't you fix this bug and stuff like that. So just be kind to them and try to help them rather than alienate them in terms of contributions. So let's talk a little bit about how to choose a project to contribute to. So I might say something that is surprising to you or not, I don't know. But if I were starting today, I would not go contribute to Kubernetes. I know this is cool, and I know lots of people want to put Kubernetes on their resume, and that's probably why I wouldn't go and contribute to Kubernetes, because it's a very popular project. Everybody wants to, everyone wants to be involved in that. They get help. And of course, they might need more help even than they get already. But there's lots of projects that are less popular that also need your help. So, you can look at some of these, and Packet literally had 3 million downloads and only has 250 contributors, of which I'm guessing probably only a couple dozen are active contributors that contribute every day and do a lot of meaningful work. So you can find a project like this where your contributions are going to be more meaningful. Basically, I would choose a project by the fact of, one is this is a technology that you want to gain experience with, right? And the second one, it's a community where you can make a meaningful impact. So one is you actually are welcome in the community, and two is you're actually helping that community. You're not just someone who spams the maintainers, but you're actually someone who's helping them to accomplish something good. And sometimes I also see people contributing in some meaningful way, like, I don't know, if you have diabetes, you can contribute to open source project related to diabetes. Or if you want to contribute to open source project related to fighting COVID-19 or something like that. So kind of choose something that's meaningful to you that you can actually feel like you're making the world a better place by contributing. Now, how do you get started? So actually, open source projects don't live in outer space. They're not just, floating out there, and they're not just code online. Basically, there's three questions that you should be asking is, who do I talk to? What do I work on? And then how do I work on this? So first one, who do I talk to? You actually can find maintainers in multiple ways, right? So you can go to contributors on the repo, and then you can see who's approving PRs, who's actually doing the most code contributions and stuff like that. You can figure out who are these people, right? If a project is well maintained, usually they will also have some description in the README on how to get in touch with them. Usually they will have something like a Discord server. They will have a Slack chat going on or something like that, some way that they could communicate with one another. And if you're not finding any of this information and you're really sad on contributing to that project, I would also sort of personally get in touch with the top contributors on the project. And again, depending on how popular the project is, the maintainers might be super, super welcoming to you. It might be like, oh my God, someone actually wants to help us do this work. This is amazing. Please, I'll walk you through how to help us do this. So the second question is, what do I work on? So, probably already that projects have CONTRIBUTING.md. And again, not every project has that. So like if you show up to a page, this is a repo I was working on a while ago, right? And this is how a default /contribute page looks like. So if you have a contribute page that looks like this, it probably means that either the project is not looking for contributions or the maintainers still haven't gotten around to sort of writing the guidelines in here. So if you're just starting out, I would probably not pick projects that looks like this because you're less likely to sort of get that hand-holding on how to contribute to the project. Now, if we compare and contrast it to some project that is actively maintained and looking for contributions, so this is TensorFlow. Again, you can go to /contribute on the repo, and then you can see, so first of all, it gives you a link to CONTRIBUTING.md, which describes the guidelines on how to actually contribute to the project. What do you need to, download, install, compile, and stuff like that. Run the test before you can contribute a PR and stuff like that. And also, there's usually a list of good first issues, so you can go and pick from them. So these are issues that have been marked by the maintainers as something that would be a good starting task for someone who just coming in to work. And I don't know what just happened. I think my PowerPoint just closed and we're going to restart it. I'm sorry. Technical difficulties all the way today. Let's try to come back in the same place. All right, am I still sharing my screen? We'll find out. All right, good. Okay, so how do you work on something? There's, again, contributing guidelines in contribute.md, but also for some projects like Gatsby, you can request more guidance on how to contribute. So for instance, Gatsby offers pair programming sessions, so you can actually go and learn how to contribute by working with one of the maintainers. So again, if you're just starting out, it pays off to look for projects like this that are going to help you to contribute in a meaningful way and to get onboarded and to be welcome in the community. Also, remember, like Suzanne said just now, that not all contribution equals code. There are multiple ways to contribute to a project. So one of them is documentation. So actually, even as a developer, if I were coming into a new open source project, I would actually not start by contributing code. I would actually start by writing some documentation, because documentation lets you onboard on the project, understand how it works better, and it also helps both maintainers and the users. And documentation is like a love letter that you write to your future self, right? What could be better than that? Then lots of open source projects also have problems around project management, right? So they need someone who will help them manage the task, manage the workload, track down issues, and make sure that everything is getting taken care of and everything is arranged in the order of priority. And again, some projects will let you actually understand how to get and take care of the project management. For instance, Express.js has a triager guide, right? So you can come in and help them triage issues, and they guide you through the process of how to actually do that. And please remember, like, everybody wants that green square and everybody wants to say my PR has been merged into XYZ project, but it's not all about PRs. It's also about other things. And if you want to contribute to the community in a meaningful way, you would actually be wise to contribute where the maintainers actually need that contribution, where the maintainers need help, rather than fighting to just contribute lines of code. But of course, if you are a developer or if you're learning to be a developer, yes, you want to get to that place where you're contributing code and actually helping to build the software as well. So interestingly enough, so this is open source contribution funnel. So basically, we say that most users will just consume your code. So they will either download that library, or they will fork it, or they will do something like that. They will never actually talk to you, right? Then there's this smaller subset of users that will actually contribute time. So they will log an issue, or they will add to the docs, or they will do something like that. Then a smaller subset of users will actually contribute code. So they will maybe contribute a bug fix or a new test or something like that. But actually the top of the funnel is actually not contributing code, is being a maintainer. So actually joining the community in which you get to influence the future direction of the project and stuff like that, and actually set the what the project looks like, right? So ideally for successful open source projects, we actually want people to go all the way through the funnel and add in the maintainer category. And that usually happens to maybe 1% of all people who come in and initially consume the code, probably even less. So that's more rainbows, because rainbows are good. Let's talk about Oktoberfest a little bit. So basically, it is a project that started to encourage contributions to open source. DigitalOcean maintains a list of projects that are looking for help through Oktoberfest, looking for contributions. But please remember, I hate to go negative on this, but please remember that it is about meaningful contributions and not spam. Maintainers are not looking for your one line or one character spammy PR, and especially, so if you look at how bad the program is, so this literally happened in the span of the first hours of October 1st this year, right? So all of these pull requests are basically spam, and they're spamming top maintainers for top projects. You will see that folks are not very happy about this type of contribution because it is not meaningful and it's actually making their life worse. And so this is a tweet from Ali Spital. She's saying, I don't know who needs to hear this, but a t-shirt isn't worth a maintainer annoyance and negative energy that you get from spamming Oktoberfest. It's not a good career move. This is not the only tweet. If you look at top OSS maintainers, lots of people are sharing their grievances. And we actually, as GitHub, we just released a feature that allows people to limit contributions from folks they don't know. And this is not where we want to go. We want to allow contributions from everybody. But when people get lots of spam, this is what happens. So please remember, a t-shirt is not worth doing bad things to people and spamming them with their already busy day. Please make sure that your contributions are meaningful. And I also want to talk about one more way to support the open source community. So it's not just about contributing code. So about a year ago, we released a feature that allows you to sponsor people on GitHub. So you can sponsor open source maintainers. And we're not charging any fees for these sponsorships. We're just basically transferring this money to maintainers. And some people who were working for free are now able to afford good life because they get, the sponsorships from folks who are consuming their projects. And that's a meaningful way to contribute to the community. Please do remember, again, as usually this happens, the top maintainers, the top projects get the most sponsorships, just like they get the most contributions. Please remember there's lots of open source projects out there. So this is a tweet from my teammate, Brian Douglas, who said, he is going to sponsor people who are then identify as Black open source maintainers to help that community. And there's other ways to look at projects that are meaningful to you and find people who you could sponsor. So if you're able to afford this, you can contribute to the community by sponsoring the maintainers. And this is More Rainbows and Unicorns. And I'm about at the end of my presentation because I went fast because I wanted to help you out with catching up on the time a little bit. So thank you for this. It was a pleasure to talk to you. Hopefully you took away something meaningful from this presentation. And again, you can find me on GitHub and on Twitter as DivineOps. And please feel free to ask any questions.